Good
Good
morning.
morning.
It's beautiful and sunshiny out this morning, and I'm
It
really
is.
enjoying that for a change.
And what wonderful rain we had.
Yes, that was another
That's
gift.
yeah, a big gift. And speaking of gifts, we had three beautiful little gifts in church yesterday morning. They were part of the children's sermon. Now we had Ella and Brinley Danner, and we had Amelia Smith. And Katie Danner was the one that did the children's sermon. And she kind of surprised all of us by asking the girls they if they remembered what Pastor Ross talked about last Sunday. And
And
of course, they said yes, and they did.
and Pastor Ross was surprised also, I think, and it was pleasant for him to know that he
It
had
was.
captured their attention.
It was. It was really. Yes, he was smiling. He was really smiling when they
Well,
were sharing. So,
the
and the
three of
flowers
them.
on the altar yesterday were for Pastor Ross in honor of all of the things that he does for us. And we're sharing a little bit more about the service because we had a few technical glitches with technology. We think something happened to the server during the storm. We're not sure. But the only thing that we had was microphones, and that too was a little bit of a challenge finding the microphones that worked. But so we are very sorry that you will not be able to watch the YouTube video of the worship service yesterday. It
It
was amazing.
it
We all pulled together and it came off just like God had his hand all over it.
Yes, we were instead of having the everything streamed on top of on the TV screens, we had to resort to our bulletins and the hymnals, which personally I prefer to the screens, but everybody has their own preference. And so it was really kind of nice to have that.
It was. It kept me on my toes, I tell you that.
You did a good
Trying,
job too.
trying to make sure all of the moving parts and pieces were moving the right direction and not clashing and running into each other. So,
Well,
but anyway,
the
it,
three children were such a blessing.
oh,
Um, Now that we have the third little girl up there, they're just really cute together.
they
All
all
three are distinctly different personalities, and it's like watching three sisters. The oldest one who knows how to do everything,
I love
and
it.
the middle one that's trying to find her place in the group, and then the little one who's just got a huge personality and is going to do whatever she needs to do to feel noticed.
That's right.
She was so cute. Ah,
So she could be the star. And if, some of you, if you don't know who the little girls are, the Ella and Brinley, they are John and Cheryl Morrison's granddaughters. Um, Zach and Katie Danner. Katie is John and Cheryl's daughter. And Amelia belongs to Sarah Smith, and Sarah has two. I haven't seen them for a while. Darling grown up boys, I'm sure now. And they used to come to First Church all the time. So we missed seeing them, Ben and Nicholas. And they were so cute to watch in worship also.
well, Emma is a little bit timid, but she really has stepped into her own here this last Sunday, and it was so fun to watch her take her courage and act on her confidence she gathered confidence, I think, from the other two, which was kind of fun.
I think so. And that's kind of like how we do.
Yes.
We gather confidence not only from each other, but we gain our strength from each other. We gain our strength from reaching out to God. And sometimes when we're tired, when we're down, when we feel lonely or depressed, we need to remember 2 Corinthians 12:9, where God says, "My strength is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness."
And another interpretation says, "My grace is sufficient for you." I've never heard of strength and grace being the same, but it's an interesting concept.
Yes. And I thought that was interesting that I don't know which version that was. The New International Version that I use does have the word grace, but it also had
I think
strength, which
I think grace has one of those words that has a lot of meanings, and that's probably a topic for another time.
well, let's write that down. I think so.
Yes.
I think so.
And then there was the 12, 2 Corinthians 12, 2 through 10. There's a whole section there. And then they talk about what that section really means. And I think it's important to get a little background on that. The Apostle Paul wrote these words to the church at Corinth in Greece. And during a season when he was overwhelmed with personal struggle, Paul begged God to remove what he described as a thorn in my flesh. Verse 7. His affliction might have been a physical ailment or spiritual opposition. Like Jesus in the garden the night before his crucifixion, Paul repeatedly asked God to remove his suffering. The Holy Spirit responded by assuring him that he'd provide the strength needed. Paul learned, "When I am weak, then I am strong." Oh, the thorns we experience in this life. Like a bird gathering its strength for the journey ahead, we can gather up God's strength for what we're facing. In his strength, we find our own.
And isn't that the truth?
And my heart kind of goes out uh, to Carol Schwartz and the loss of her granddaughter. We learned about that during worship yesterday. She was notified while she was in worship with us. And there's just nothing that is pain like that. And I want her to be comforted by the idea that my grace is sufficient for you. And my power is made perfect in your weakness. Because we all feel powerless when that kind of situation arises in our families. Or we feel somehow responsible because we want to be able to fix it. As moms and grandmas,
Yeah.
the family looks to you when it's in times of trouble, and sometimes you can fix it, sometimes you can't, but in all times we can pray about it, and we can talk about a power greater than ourselves.
And at that same time, we all pull closer together. Um, we know we can't deal with something that devastating on our own. And as Debbie says, we've said so many times, how do people get through situations like this if they don't have the Holy Spirit, if they don't know Jesus, if they don't believe that there is a God? I don't know how.
I don't know. Well, it's like when you think back to our early history as a nation, the Puritans, when they set sail from England, their faith had to have been incredible because they didn't know what laid ahead for them. They didn't know whether they'd survive the journey. Some did, some didn't. And then when you get there, What are you going to find? Are you going to be able to shelter from a storm? Are you going to find food to eat? I mean, the amount of faith and trust in God that they had to have had was amazing.
Yeah.
I just, I
And
don't know that
do we have that much faith?
I don't know. I'd
I
like to
don't
think,
know either.
I think if my back was against the wall, perhaps, if it were for my children or my grandchildren, I would find it because you always do when it's your kids and grandkids. You summon from deep within you or you call out to God for help so that you can help them and and I don't know, I just provide what they need, the solace, the comfort, the grace, the strength. I think there's just the word grace needs a huge big template or a big poster. It's kind of like the one that Lydia has in the gathering area at church, where she asks a question and we had to, what does that mean to you? And you have to write down what your thought is, one or two words. And I think we get a million different words to describe grace.
I agree.
I always kind of thought of it as pardoned, I think.
Yes. Well, and that it depends. It depends on the situation, what the word means at that particular time. Because, like you said, grace means so many different things.
Our weakness is pardoned. Our weakness is forgiven. Our weakness is what calls us to the foot of God, the feet of God, so that we can be there and worship and pray, so that we know that our prayers are heard, and it's also confidence and assurance, knowing that He is there for us and He hears, and eventually our time of difficulty will pass. I don't know, like Paul being stuck in prison. How many years was he in prison?
No, I don't. I don't know.
I mean, can you imagine being in prison back in those times during those conditions where they were treated like animals in
Yeah.
a prison cell?
And he never gave up.
No.
He
And
had the faith.
he kept writing words of
He
encouragement.
did. He did. You know, I wasn't in Sunday school very long yesterday, so I didn't hear any discussion, or I just saw that one picture that Tad had on the screen where Jesus had a hold of the wrists of Satan, and Satan's face was twisted and ugly, and
It's
just
what evil looks like.
it's what evil looks like. And Jesus was calm, and like he was trying to, I don't know, maybe console Satan,
He was staring
maybe.
him down, I thought. I looked at that and I
Yes.
saw him staring him down, but yet his face was not hard and bent on destruction.
Yeah.
It was offering maybe salvation or hope. I don't know.
Maybe I could get Tad to send me that picture, and we could put that in the weekly connection.
That was a strong photo. Was It's painting the face of evil, and it's like there was just nothing else like it. We recognize it when we see it.
And that's why there's so much grace,
Thank goodness.
because we're so tempted, and we're human. So it's difficult. You know, I
Even
had somebody ask me at the breakfast on Saturday, um, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough to be able to get into God's kingdom?
that's not how you get there.
No, but am I doing enough in God's name is what was meant. Not, yeah. And I know it's not our deeds.
It's not good works.
It's not the good works.
It's like the story of Martha and Mary, where Martha's feeling resentful because she's doing all the work, she's doing the acts, but Mary's sitting at the feet of God, of Jesus, and learning and listening to his teaching. And I think that's where he'd rather have us be. And in that causes us to go out and do good works and
It does.
be his servants. But we have to have the knowledge of what it is he desires of us before we can go out and just do things that we think are worthy. That's the difference. It's not the things we think that are worthy. It's the things he calls us to do that are worthy, not what our human. Well, I'm going to do a load of laundry today, and that's my good work. And I'm thinking, no, that's not what he's calling me to
No.
do. But if I spend it like Pastor Ross was saying on Sunday, that we should. Are we spending enough time in prayer? Are we spending enough time in the Bible, reading the Word? Are we? And then when we've done those things, we are given or presented with the opportunities to serve.
And that happened Saturday morning at the community breakfast. There were several from the church that were sitting at the tables, just visiting. And what an awesome opportunity we have to just sit and visit with our guests.
Mm-hmm.
And as Pastor Lydia said in the post that she did on Facebook about General Conference, listening is such a big part of being supportive and learning and understanding why people do what they do, where they came from. How does that help us to help them, I guess?
That's a hard thing to do because I've struggled with that my whole life. Because I feel like I feel obligated to fill the dead spaces or the quiet, when sometimes the quiet is just as important as the words being spoken, if not more so. How can you ponder what someone has just told you if you were following it up right away with something else? So now you've forgotten this other thing that was said, and now you're focusing on this new thing, and you never get a chance to finish a thought.
Right.
Or take it to its conclusion.
Yeah. So sometimes that silence, that dead space, is a good thing, because then God speaks to us. I didn't know that was in my. I didn't know that was in my head. I didn't know that was in my heart.
Well, when people read from the pulpit, a lot of people are nervous if they haven't done it very often, and so they tend to rush through the gospel lesson or the New Old Testament lesson, and they rush through it, and the words may not be clear because you've sped through them. B, that nobody's had a chance to really savor the phrases or the meaning behind those. And at the end of it, we move on to the next thing,
Mm-hmm.
rather than having that moment of silence to really think about what was said. So pacing yourself, it's like singing music. There's a tempo to the spoken word, not just the sung word, that you speak clearly, you take your time to say the phrase and then pause and then move on to the next phrase so that people can take in what you just said. And I think that that's so important, but it's hard to do when you're nervous.
It's very important, because we do need that time to digest what is being said, what is being read. And I have to tell you, when Pastor Ross sent the scriptures that he was going to use on Sunday morning, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm the liturgist, and what is this he's having me read? he sent me the wrong scriptures the first time. He sent me Genesis chapter 25, verses 31 to 41. And I almost called him and said, okay, give me a quick lesson. I have no idea how to pronounce these words. There are names. I have no clue. Well, then later he sent me the correct 1 Samuel text. And I was like, oh, whew, I don't have to get up there and try to read anything meaningful that I can't even pronounce the words. I thought maybe he was playing a joke on me at first. So,
But you can
anyway.
tell that you put some thought into it and you were going to try and work out those because you had looked at it ahead of time. And a lot of times I think when people are liturgists or they are reading or they're filling in for someone and they haven't had a chance to look at the scripture and they run across a name or a place that they can't pronounce, and it's obvious then that someone hasn't spent time or did a little research on how to say that,
Yeah.
and it does make it awkward for you and for everyone else trying to put it into context.
I was
So
quite relieved I didn't have to go to the whatever it is that you speak the word or you spell the word, and then it tells you how to pronounce it. But even that, sometimes it's like I still can't do it. So anyway,
I think a lot of words sound like other words, and so you might get the wrong pronunciation, even though it
yeah,
might be the same word with a different context. So yeah, I think that you and Ross put it all together and it was really a good worship service on Sunday, and I wouldn't have missed it for anything, and I'm
it was
glad that we
different.
attended. The other thing that Pastor Ross read was the text from a song written by the choral arranger, John Rutter. It's one of my favorite pieces, and it's called For the Beauty of the Earth, because we was talking about growing your garden, and the words speak to the beauty and the majesty of our world. For the beauty of the earth, for the beauty of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our our hymn of joyful praise. For the beauty of each hour, of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our joyful hymn of praise. For the joy of human love, brother, sister, parent, child, friends on earth and friends above, for all gentle thoughts and mild. Lord of all, to thee we raise our joyful hymn of praise. For each perfect gift of thine, to our race so freely given, graces human and divine, flowers of earth and buds of heaven. Lord of all, to thee we raise our joyful hymn of praise.
I love that.
Me too.
I just
It's an
absolutely.
absolutely gorgeous piece of music. I hope we can get back to it at choir.
I hope so too. I hope so.
It's really worth doing. And I think right now, with everything so beautiful, he was talking about the red bud and the dogwood and all the other things that are beautiful. The flower garden that's blooming near the parking lot at the church is absolutely gorgeous. And with all the rain, it seems to have grown 6 inches in the last week
Yes.
and filled in so beautifully.
You
And
know,
the
there was a short devotion that was on one of those that I share frequently, one of the daily devotions that comes to my email. And this one um, is about church camp. And this isn't me, but this was what was shared. My childhood church camp was on the banks of a gorgeous rushing river, and that was mentioned in the song. The river would sparkle in the sunshine, reflecting the rays of light into a dazzling display. The flowing current surged around massive boulders. Deep pools form with brisk and refreshing water. That river captured my imagination as a child. It was a place where we could splash and play during the hot summer. The river also functioned as an amazing backdrop to the Bible studies and the moments of reflection. I could get lost in the sound of the water flowing over the rocks and stones. It was a refuge of peace. At times, when I feel discouraged or think that my work is in vain, I think back to that rushing river. A sense of peace washes over me, and I am restored. And, that back to the very first thing we were talking about, gathering our strength in God. If we just look, I can look out my window and I can see 10 things without looking very far that it's from God. And it does give me strength. It gives me renewed energy. And you can just see the water rushing down the river, especially with all the rains, and it's a very special time, a very special place in nature when you feel God there and all the beauty that He gives us.
And I think about the place I recently moved from. I lived in the mountains, the wild Sierras, and there were creeks and lakes, and there were trees and large forests and big boulders and rocks, and there were birds and everything, a deer. Uh, you could wake up in the morning and hear a woodpecker pounding on the telephone pole outside. And that brings me peace. But I know I have a friend who finds her peace sitting on a beach near the ocean. And she craves that, and her soul has her seek it out every so often to be restored. And when I moved here, the thing that I find so wonderful about living here is the beautiful, vast sky and plains, the rolling hills, the green grass, the gorgeous trees. And it's just so pastoral and peaceful. The grazing cattle, the growing crops. There's never any lack of anything to restore your soul. So, depending on where you are, you find different things in those places to restore yourself. God provides that which feeds you.
And the storm that came through Saturday night, and knocked out electricity, and it was kind of that we were watching the Royals game. Of course, we lost our service, and we just sat in the darkness, and it was, well, we finally went and got a lantern, but just the quiet. And you could hear the thunder, and you could see the lightning, and the cats went going crazy. But it's the powerful power of God.
I love listening to the rain and to the thunders and lightning. I know it can be devastating, and I know the power of God can wreak havoc, but the sheer might causes you to be in awe of
Yes.
that which, if He can do all that, He can take care of us.
Even when we resist.
Yes, there's nothing more powerful.
Nothing more powerful. You're right. part of the end of this devotion, which is a good way to close us out for today. God is our peace. He is our refuge. He is our strength. He is the beauty of the world, the earth, everything that grows, depending on what we're watching grow. And maybe Pastor Ross said he would take that sermon series and expand it later. But we celebrate and we rejoice in just being in God's world, in his presence. And we need to wait and listen for that strength. It's there. We have to be ready for it.
Goodbye, everyone. I think we're out of time.
I think our time is up. I think
Bye.
so.